I used to measure love in quiet things. Packed lunches, ironed shirts, paid bills nobody thanked me for. Somewhere along the way, I started believing that if I gave enough, I'd finally be kept. When my daughter got engaged, she called me at 6 a.m. breathless, sparkling. "Mom," he asked, she said. And for a second I heard the little girl who once slept with her head on my shoulder during thunderstorms. Then came the list. Not a list of dreams. An invoice disguised as a vision board. Venue, florist, designer chairs, live string quartet, champagne tower. She spoke in numbers like they were colors. "It's not that expensive," she said, as if my checking account was a bottomless well. "Everyone does it this way." I told myself it was a once-in-a-lifetime moment. I told myself she deserved what I never had. I told myself she'd remember who stood behind her when the photos faded. So I wrote the first check. Then the next. And the next. $120,000 doesn't leave your hands all at once. It drips out of you deposit by deposit, until you wake up one morning and realize you've been funding a fairy tale that doesn't include your name. At the tasting, the planner smiled too brightly and called me sweetie. At the dress fitting, my daughter sighed when I asked if she wanted the veil pinned higher. "Mom," she whispered through clenched teeth, "just don't make this about you." I laughed it off. I did what I always did. I swallowed my feelings like vitamins. Necessary, unpleasant, routine. But the week of the rehearsal dinner, something in her voice changed. It went flat, careful, like she was rehearsing lines she didn't write. And I didn't know yet that she was about to say one sentence that would cost her every single thing I had paid for. By the time the rehearsal dinner arrived, I had perfected the art of shrinking myself without disappearing. I wore the navy dress she approved days earlier, nothing too loud. Nothing that might embarrass her. I practiced my smile in the mirror. The polite one that never asks for space. The restaurant looked like a magazine spread. Candlelight, crystal glasses, linen folded into perfect shapes. Money hummed softly in every corner. His family filled the center tables, laughing easily, touching shoulders, confident in their belonging. When I approached, conversations lowered. Not stopped, just adjusted. His mother scanned me quickly, then offered a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. My daughter drifted toward me, radiant and distant at the same time. She kissed my cheek. "Mom, could you sit closer to the end? We're saving the middle seats for family." I nodded. I didn't ask. The speeches began. Stories I wasn't part of. Childhood memories I'd never heard. His parents spoke about tradition, legacy, and the kind of family we are. Each sentence felt like a quiet exclusion. Then my daughter stood up. She raised her glass and thanked everyone. Planners, designers, his parents. She spoke about growth, about new beginnings, about choosing the right people for your future. Finally, her eyes landed on me. "Some relationships change," she said calmly. "And that's okay." A few guests smiled, thinking it was symbolic. Then she added clearly, "Mom, you're not family to me anymore." Silence swallowed the room. I felt no tears. No shock. Just a clean, sudden stillness inside me. I smiled. I lifted my glass. And while everyone waited for me to break, I made a decision that would quietly undo everything I had paid for. I finished my drink slowly, letting the room breathe again before I did. No one spoke to me. Plates were cleared too loudly. Laughter restarted in short, nervous bursts like a machine trying to remember how it worked. My daughter avoided my eyes. She moved from table to table, accepting congratulations, soaking in sympathy that wasn't meant for me. When she finally passed by, she leaned close and whispered, "Please don't cause a scene. This is my week." Not "Are you okay?" Not "I didn't mean it like that." Just a warning. Outside, the night air felt honest. Cool. Unimpressed by chandeliers and cruelty. I stood there for a moment, realizing my hands weren't shaking. My chest didn't ache. What I felt was clarity, sharp and steady. In the car, I opened my phone. Dozens of emails waited, all neatly labeled, all addressed to me. Final venue payment scheduled. Florist balance due at 9 a.m. Band confirmation required. I called the venue first. I asked about the cancellation window. The manager hesitated, then confirmed what I already knew. The deposit was gone, but the remaining balance could still be reversed. "Please cancel," I said. Then the florist. Then the band. Each call was brief, professional, final. This wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was refusal. I was done financing a life where I was treated like an inconvenience. Near midnight, my phone buzzed. What did you do? The planner says payments are missing. I turned the phone face down. That night, I slept without replaying her words. Without planning apologies I didn't owe. And somewhere between midnight and morning, I understood something simple and permanent. If I wasn't family anymore, then neither was my money. Morning arrived quietly like it didn't want to get involved. Sunlight filled my kitchen, touching the places where life had always waited for me to return. I made coffee the way I always had, slow, deliberate, then sat at the table and opened my laptop. The planner's emails stacked up like dominoes mid-fall. Polite panic at first, then urgency, then thinly veiled accusation. I read them without rushing. Contracts, clauses, timelines. Every signature led back to my name. I replied once. Brief, clear. Asterisk, all services paid by me have been cancelled. Please direct further questions to the couple. Asterisk. My phone rang immediately. I let it ring. Then again. I answered on the third call. My daughter's voice cracked through the speaker. How could you do this to me? She demanded. Everyone is calling. This is humiliating. I waited for her to say something else. Something softer. She didn't. You said I wasn't family anymore, I reminded her. My voice surprised even me. Steady, unraised. I'm respecting that. She gasped, like she hadn't expected memory to be part of the conversation. You know I didn't mean it that way. Words have directions, I said. Yours went forward. Mine will too. She started listing consequences. Lost deposits, angry guests, embarrassment. Not once did she ask how I felt. Not once did she apologize. When the call ended, my hands finally shook. Not from regret. From release. I stood up and opened the drawer where I kept old receipts and birthday cards. Notes written in her childhood handwriting. I didn't throw them away. I didn't need to. They were already finished doing their work. Outside, a delivery truck passed. Somewhere, plans were being rewritten without me. And for the first time, I didn't feel erased. I felt free. By noon, the story had spread faster than I expected. My phone filled with messages from relatives who hadn't called in years, suddenly concerned. Some asked what happened. Others didn't ask at all. They told me what I should have done. She's stressed. It's just wedding nerves. You're still her mother. I read every message carefully, noticing the same pattern. They spoke about her feelings, her reputation, her big day. No one mentioned the sentence she'd thrown at me like a door slammed shut. One aunt suggested I apologize to keep the peace. A cousin reminded me how much money had already been spent, as if numbers could buy back dignity. I replied to none of them. Instead, I opened my banking app and looked at the balance that remained. For the first time in months, the number didn't feel temporary. Felt like mine. In the afternoon, I went for a walk. The neighborhood hadn't changed. Children still rode bikes. An elderly man watered his lawn with patient care. Life, it seemed, continued without consulting wedding planners. When I returned home, there was a voicemail from my daughter. Her tone was different now, controlled, rehearsed. Mom, we need to talk. People are saying things. His parents are upset. This doesn't have to be so dramatic. I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to the message twice. Still no apology. Still no I was wrong. Just damage control. I deleted the voicemail. That evening, I took out a small notebook I hadn't used in years and wrote one sentence on the first page. I will no longer pay to be disrespected. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a vow made in anger. It was a boundary. And once written, it felt impossible to cross again. The next day, she came to my house without calling first. I saw her car through the window and felt a familiar urge to tidy up, to prepare myself to be acceptable. I didn't move. She knocked twice, sharp and impatient, then let herself in like she used to when she was younger. For a moment, she looked around, confused, as if expecting the place to look different now that I had changed. Do you have any idea what you've done? She said, standing in the middle of the living room. No hello. No hesitation. I offered her a chair. She stayed standing. His parents are furious, she continued. People think you're unstable. They're asking if you're even coming to the wedding. I met her eyes. Am I invited? She blinked. The question seemed to catch her off guard. That's not the point. It is to me, I said. She exhaled loudly, running a hand through her hair. Look what I said at the dinner. Everyone knows I didn't mean it literally. You embarrassed me. You need to fix this. Fix. The word landed exactly where it always had. I didn't embarrass you, I replied. I believed you. Her face tightened. So you're choosing money over your own daughter? I shook my head slowly. I'm choosing honesty. Silence stretched between us. For the first time she looked unsure. Not hurt, not sorry, just unsure. You can't just stop being my mother, she said. I didn't, I answered quietly. You did. She left without another word, the door closing harder than necessary. I sat alone in the quiet she'd left behind and understood something new. Boundaries don't always end relationships. Sometimes they reveal which ones were already over. That night sleep refused to come. Not because of guilt, but because memories kept lining up, patient and insistent. Moments I had dismissed as misunderstandings now stood in a neat row, waiting to be acknowledged. The first time she told me not to come to an event because I wouldn't fit in. The way she corrected my stories in front of others. How she introduced me by my first name instead of my mother. Each moment had asked the same question. I had answered it wrong every time. Near midnight, I opened an old photo album. Birthday cakes I baked after long shifts. School plays where I clapped the loudest. Holidays I hosted so she could relax. Proof of love that never made it into her speeches. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unfamiliar number. Asterisk, this is his mother. We need to talk. Asterisk. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. Then I replied once. About what? Her answer came quickly. Asterisk, about how families handle disagreements. About forgiveness. Asterisk. I almost laughed. Forgiveness had always been demanded from me, never offered. I typed slowly. Forgiveness comes after accountability. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. No reply followed. I closed the album and slid it back onto the shelf. The past had done its job. It had explained the present. In the quiet that followed, I didn't feel alone. I felt complete. And for the first time, I understood that love without respect isn't love at all. It's just habit. 2 days before what was supposed to be the wedding, the silence broke. Not with an apology, but with desperation. My daughter called early in the morning. Her voice was tight, rushed, stripped of ceremony. Mom, we're running out of time, she said. Things are falling apart. I listened without interrupting. The venue won't hold the date. The band is booked elsewhere. His parents are asking questions I can't answer. She paused, then added, I need you. There it was. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just need. I can't help you, I said gently. Her breath hitched. So you're really going to destroy my wedding over one sentence? One sentence can change a life, I replied. You taught me that. She went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice sharpened. If you don't fix this, don't bother coming. Everyone will know what kind of person you are. I closed my eyes. The threat felt familiar, almost comforting in its predictability. Then they'll know, I said. She hung up. Later that afternoon, I went to the bank. Not to move money, not to hide it, just to look at my name on the screen and feel its weight. Ownership feels different when it isn't tied to fear. On the way home, I passed the venue. Trucks were unloading flowers meant for someone else. Life rearranges itself quickly when money changes direction. That evening, I lit a candle and sat in the quiet. I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring anymore. I was waiting for myself to fully believe what I had already done. And I was almost there. The night before the wedding date arrived without ceremony. No countdown. No nerves. Just an ordinary evening that felt strangely earned. I cooked for myself, nothing elaborate. Soup, bread. A simple meal that didn't need approval. As I ate, I realized how long it had been since I chose something, only because I wanted it. My phone stayed quiet until late. Then a message appeared from a distant relative who loved gossip more than truth. Asterisk, did you hear? They're saying you backed out because you were jealous. That you wanted control. Asterisk. I read it once. Then again. The lie wasn't new, it was just louder now. I typed nothing back. Instead, I stepped onto the balcony and watched the city settle into night. Lights flickered on in other people's lives. Somewhere, my daughter was probably rehearsing explanations, reshaping the story so it wouldn't hurt her future. I wondered if she ever thought about the past, about the years when control was the only thing I didn't have, when every decision I made bent toward her comfort. Just before midnight, another message arrived. This time from her. If you change your mind, it's not too late. I waited a full minute before replying. I already did change my mind, I wrote. Just not today. No response followed. At midnight exactly, I closed my laptop and turned off my phone. Tomorrow would come whether I participated or not. I went to bed knowing something important. For the first time in my life, I wasn't choosing peace over truth. I was choosing both. The morning that was supposed to be her wedding day arrived quietly. No horns. No cameras. No white dress passing my window. Just sunlight and the sound of a neighbor opening their garage. I woke up earlier than usual and lay still, waiting for regret to rush in. It didn't. What I felt instead was a steady calm, unfamiliar but welcome. I made tea and turned on the radio. A love song played, something about forever. I almost laughed at the timing. Around 10 my phone vibrated. Not a call. A notification. Someone had tagged me in a photo from years ago. My daughter as a child, missing teeth, laughing with cake on her face. The caption read, "Family is everything." I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I closed the app. By noon, messages started arriving from people I didn't recognize. Friends of friends, distant connections. Some offered sympathy. Others asked questions they didn't deserve answers to. One message stood out. "I'm sorry," it read. No name. No explanation. I didn't reply, but I felt it settle somewhere deep, like proof that the truth had begun to surface on its own. In the afternoon I went out. I bought myself a small bouquet from a street vendor. Flowers I liked, not ones chosen to match a theme. At home I placed them in a glass and set them by the window. When evening came I realized something unexpected. The day had passed. No collapse. No apology tour. No dramatic ending. Just a woman still standing in a life that finally felt honest. And I understood then, losing a wedding is painful, but losing yourself lasts much longer. I had chosen the shorter pain. Late that evening there was a knock at my door. Not sharp. Not demanding. Careful, like someone afraid of the answer. I didn't open it right away. I knew who it was before I looked through the peephole. His father stood there alone, hands clasped, suit jacket gone, shoulders heavier than they had been at the rehearsal dinner. When I opened the door, he cleared his throat. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. He didn't sit. He looked around the room, taking in the modest furniture, the quiet order. "I didn't know," he said finally. "About what she said to you. About everything you paid for." I waited. "She told us you wanted control. That you were threatening to ruin things if you didn't get your way." His jaw tightened. "But the contracts were in your name. The cancellations were legal. That tells its own story." I poured us both water. My hands were steady. "The wedding didn't fall apart because of money," I said. "It fell apart because of words." He nodded slowly, as if repeating that sentence to himself. "My wife doesn't see it that way. Neither does my son. They're focused on appearances." "Appearances are expensive," I replied. "That's why I stopped paying for them." He looked at me then, not with pity, not with judgment, but with something close to respect. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not as her in-law. As a parent." The words landed softly, but they stayed. When he left, the house felt quieter than before, but not emptier. Something had been acknowledged. Something had been named. And I realized I wasn't waiting for my daughter anymore. I was finally being met where I stood. The days after blurred together, but one moment stayed sharp. My daughter didn't call. Not to argue. Not to explain. Silence became her final statement. Instead, messages arrived from strangers, people who had been invited, vendors who had heard fragments of the story. Some were kind. Some were curious. Few were cruel. I let them pass through me like weather. On the fourth day, I found a letter in my mailbox. Handwritten. No return address. I recognized the slant immediately. She wrote about pressure. About expectations. about how she felt trapped between two families and chose the one that looked stronger. She said she didn't mean to hurt me. She said she needed space. She did not say I'm sorry. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. Words without accountability are just explanations looking for forgiveness they haven't earned. That afternoon I met a friend for coffee. Someone who had known me before motherhood swallowed my edges. She listened. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You didn't lose her," she said. She stepped away. "There's a difference." I walked home lighter than I expected. Grief still existed, but it no longer felt like punishment. Felt like transition. That night, I made a decision that surprised even me. I booked a small trip. Nothing extravagant. Just somewhere quiet, somewhere unfamiliar. I wasn't running away. I was moving forward. And for the first time since becoming a mother, I wasn't waiting to be chosen. The morning I left for my trip, I packed slowly. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to notice everything: the weight of the suitcase, the sound of the zipper, the calm in my chest. I was learning how to move without urgency. At the airport, no one recognized me as someone's mother. I was just another woman with a boarding pass and time. The anonymity felt like permission. I spent my days walking along quiet streets, sitting in cafes where no one asked questions, watching life continue without needing my approval. At night, I slept deeply without dreams of fixing or explaining. On the third day, my phone rang. I let it ring twice before answering. It was my daughter. Her voice was smaller now. Not angry. Not sharp. Just tired. "I didn't think you'd actually leave," she said. "I didn't leave you," I replied. "I left the situation." There was a pause. "Everyone keeps asking where you are." "I'm somewhere peaceful," I said. "You should try it sometime." She didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice cracked. "I didn't mean to lose you." "I know," I said. "And I did. But wanting something doesn't protect it," I added gently. "Actions do." She whispered my name the way she used to when she was scared as a child. For a moment I almost folded. Then I remembered the dinner. The sentence. The silence. "We'll talk," I said. "Just not yet." When the call ended, I didn't feel guilt. I felt patience. For the first time, our relationship wasn't being held together by my fear of abandonment. It was being rebuilt on truth or not at all. When I returned home, the house greeted me like an old friend who had learned to wait. Nothing was broken. Nothing had collapsed in my absence. The quiet felt earned, not lonely. I unpacked slowly, placing things back where they belonged. Then I noticed the framed photo on the shelf, the one of my daughter and me from years ago. I didn't take it down. I turned it slightly so it faced the light instead of the room. That evening, another message arrived from her. Shorter this time. Less guarded. Asterisk, I keep thinking about what you said. About words having directions. Asterisk. I read it twice. Then once more. I replied carefully. Asterisk, words tell us where we're standing. Actions tell us where we're going. Asterisk. Minutes passed. Then more. I don't know how to fix this, she wrote. I stared at the screen, remembering how many times I had said those exact words about her. About us, about everything. I typed, erased, typed again. Fixing isn't the same as rebuilding, I finally sent. Asterisk, rebuilding takes time. And honesty. Asterisk. Her response came slower. Are you saying there's a chance? I closed my eyes. I'm saying there's a process, I answered. And it doesn't start with pretending nothing happened. That night, I slept in my own bed, aware of the distance between us but no longer afraid of it. Distance, I was learning, can be respectful, can be necessary. Love doesn't disappear when you stop chasing it. Sometimes it waits to see if it will be met halfway. Weeks passed, and the noise around the canceled wedding finally faded. New stories replaced the old ones. People moved on as they always do. What remained was quieter and more important. My daughter and I spoke occasionally, brief messages, careful calls. No accusations. No demands. Just truth placed gently on the table between us. It was unfamiliar, but it felt real. One afternoon she came over again. This time she called first. We sat in the kitchen, the same table where she once did homework while I cooked. She didn't look around like before. She looked at me. I was ashamed. she said suddenly. Of where I came from. Of not fitting into his world. And I took it out on you. The words landed heavy but clean. I wanted to belong so badly, she continued. I thought if I cut you out, I'd finally be enough. I nodded. And did it work? She shook her head, eyes filling. No. There it was. Not an excuse. Not a defense. I don't know what our relationship looks like now, she said. But I don't want it built on lies. Neither did I. I didn't reach for her hand. I didn't rush forgiveness. I let the moment exist as it was. Trust takes time, I said. And consistency. She agreed. When she left, I felt something fragile but alive settle into place. Not a happy ending. Possible one. And I knew this much for certain. I hadn't lost my daughter by standing up for myself. I had finally given us a chance to meet honestly. After that conversation, I stopped measuring progress by apologies and started watching behavior. Promises are easy. Change is quieter. She began calling just to ask how my day was. Not to fix anything. Not to ask for something. Just to listen. First, I stayed guarded. Old habits don't dissolve overnight. One afternoon, she showed up with groceries I like, things she remembered from childhood. Not expensive. Thoughtful. She cooked while I sat at the table, the roles gently reversed. I'm not asking you to forget, she said, stirring the pot. I'm asking you to let me earn my way back. I believed her because she didn't rush the answer. We talked about boundaries. Real ones. About what respect looks like when it isn't performative. About how love doesn't require humiliation as proof of loyalty. She admitted something else then, something I hadn't expected. The wedding was never really mine, she said. It was a performance. And when it fell apart, so did the illusion. I felt sadness for her, but not responsibility. That difference mattered. When she left that evening, she hugged me carefully, like someone touching something valuable. I stood in the doorway long after her car disappeared, understanding something important. Reconciliation isn't about returning to what was. It's about deciding what will never be allowed again. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid that choosing myself meant losing her. It meant finally showing her how. Months later, I stood in a small garden behind my house, hands in the soil, planting something new. Not for an event. Not for an audience. Just because it was time. My daughter sat nearby, quietly helping, passing me tools without being asked. There was no grand conversation, no dramatic apology speech. Just presence. Consistent. Earned. The wedding photos were never taken. The dress was returned. The guests found other weekends to fill. Life absorbed the chaos and moved forward as it always does. What remained was simpler. A relationship no longer funded by fear. Love no longer confused with sacrifice. Respect no longer treated as optional. I still think about that dinner, she said softly. About how easily I said those words. So do I replied. Not because they hurt. Because they told the truth. She nodded, accepting that. We didn't rebuild everything. We rebuilt enough. That money stayed where it belonged. The silence taught what lectures never could. And the boundaries I drew became the foundation we now stand on. I learned something I wish I had known earlier. You can give someone everything and still lose them. But the moment you stop abandoning yourself, you finally become impossible to lose. I pressed the soil down firm and steady. Some things only grow after the old plans are canceled.